Well, hello again, and welcome to the Old Bob Show. And as usual, it's such a blessing to be here at Vernon Communications, working with Randy and Jean, and of course, my special guests on an every week basis. This week, we're going to talk with Sheriff John Spears about a very important and significant and impacting kind of problem that's going on in our culture. Not only here in Vernon County, but in all surrounding counties and through the state of Wisconsin, through our nation, and if you will, the world. And you know what I'm talking about, protesting. But more than that, we're talking about here locally about drugs and about law enforcement and about dangers and about what you can do to help Sheriff John Spears and all his fine deputies to help combat this problem. It's a big problem, John.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is, Bob.
John told me that just before we came on board here that this last week was a real doozy of a week.
It was a busy week for law enforcement in Vernon County.
What are the most infractious things going on, John?
Well, we're dealing with a lot of drug issues. Obviously, that seems to be continuous. We've had several cases again this week of issues with drugs, mainly around heroin and methamphetamine, and that's always disturbing in our community because it's widespread enough. It affects the entire culture. There's no way to diagnose who's going to be next. Basically, it affects young kids. We've seen it in high schools with adults. We've seen it with people that you would never expect to be using or part of these situations.
Wow, this sounds very bad because not too many years ago, you could kind of pinpoint the incoming source of drugs. In other words, somebody would come up from Chicago, for example, or from Minneapolis, these two quiet communities there, and you could kind of pinpoint all that. But today it sounds endemic, and I mean, it sounds like it can filter up from anywhere. Now, why is this?
Well, it's a change, excuse me, in law enforcement, excuse me. We're always playing catch-up sometimes because we are reactionary. We react to or respond to a particular call for help or assistance or situation. In the drug culture, at one point in time, such as with methamphetamine, if somebody was going to produce that, it was like we had here years ago right near Westby where we had a super lab. You needed a chemist and you needed all this equipment, excuse me, to set up a drug lab.
Here, you know what, I'll give you a little coffee from the Oathpick cup.
Oh, there you go, thank you. But today that is transformed into, they're able to manufacture methamphetamine a lot faster with basically household materials, and you don't have to be a chemist. You just have to be a cook or now have the know-how either off the internet or from someone else to manufacture small batches of methamphetamine, and that makes it very dangerous because it's so mobile now. You don't have to set up a lab. It can be done in a motel room, in someone's car, in your neighbor's house. Like I had said earlier, we could actually be making methamphetamine here during your show and produce a batch, and that's hard for us to detect and locate.
I'll tell you, John, Sheriff John, that's a sobering event, many events going on in our culture because you're talking about peer approval. And, peer approval is kind of strong at all age levels.
Yep.
And especially with our younger people.
Absolutely.
And so this would take place probably in a back room or even over a table in a bar or in a school room or whatever.
Sure. Anywhere they can have some privacy. And the dangerous thing for us is because the manufacturing methods today produces hazardous material, and waste material that's hazardous to everyone's health, it's not beyond the realm of possibilities for the sheriff's office to receive a call of a car crash on Highway 14 and send first responders and firefighters and paramedics to assist and realize everybody is exposed to these hazardous chemicals if it was somebody who got in a wreck while manufacturing meth in their car going down the road. And so it opens law enforcement and all emergency services to another threat, another risk that with the risk of hepatitis and HIV and all these other things and Ebola that everybody deals with. It's just another thing in that arsenal against the first responders.
This is a real moral breakdown within our society. And so, you know, I would ask the question, does it happen in various homes, or in homes that are poverty-stricken, or broken homes, or does it happen in homes that we like to think are good, that everyone behaves themselves? And
The quickest answer is yes. Yeah, you've
Yeah.
covered about all of it.
Wow.
We never know where we're going to see it. We just never know. My phone rings quite a few times from parents who call and say, "What do I do?" They call my cell phone and they say, "We're dealing with a son or a daughter at home that here's what they're into, or here's what their friends are doing," and it's tough. You have to balance that between being a parent and being a sheriff, and a lot of those times, and almost all of those times, the parents are reaching out for help. They don't know where to turn.
Right.
So
Absolutely, and it's not like you know you know, you get help from other counties or other places. It's right here,
Yep.
and it happens at your very doorstep. So you need extra help, and you know, isn't this one of those occasions where our churches and our institutions should really be prepped up in terms of working with each other and all young people to try and persuade them that this is dangerous for your body and soul as well as everyone else?
absolutely, and we're very fortunate in Vernon County. We do have some very strong partnerships. We have some great partnerships in Vernon County that have been forged over the years, and when we do have a crisis situation or something where we need to expand and get the assistance to people, we have great people and great organizations that do jump right in and work together, and we're seeing that oftentimes it can't be done by one. It has to be a combination of the right resources to fit the needs and to get those things going and to get that to the people that need it. And we have that. We're very fortunate. Where we lack is we don't have any treatment facilities or anything like that here locally in Vernon County. You know, we have to send them away from the area,
Right.
and it gets them the help they need. But also, that becomes a strain then on families who have to travel and have miles in between, where it would be great if we had a facility locally where
Yeah.
people could get, you know, some of
So
that.
tell me what is a treatment facility made up of?
There's various levels. Some of the ones that we see that we get involved with are the treatment facilities where someone with a drug addiction especially can go and stay and have, you know, some 24-hour basically coverage. You know, people working with them to combat that drug addiction and to teach them what they need, those skills basically to, you know, break those addictions and those habits, and especially break those ties with the people that they're connected with and that culture of drug use. And that's the hardest for them. And especially in today's world, because as you said earlier, it's a changing culture, and what I see is the social media part of today is incredibly strong for young people.
Oh my.
Yeah, you
I
want to
know.
punish a young person today, you take their smartphone away from them, and they're devastated. They can't function because they live on those. Their communication skills, in my opinion, are greatly decreased because nobody talks.
Oh.
They text and Snapchat
Boy,
and
oh boy.
Facebook, and, you know, instead of carrying on a face-to-face conversation with
Yeah.
somebody. And I think that's important too. They don't know how to interact a lot of times with a counselor or with family even, because the days of the family sitting down for supper and talking about the day are very rare in a lot of families. It's in and out, everybody's doing their own thing, and my wife and I were out to eat the other evening, and I like to watch people, and a family came into the restaurant and sat down, and it was clear that it was a grandmother and a grandfather,
Yeah.
and then the parents,
Yeah.
and then grandchildren. The minute they sat down, every single person at the table had their phones out, and they never set their phones down while they got their appetizers and their meal.
Wow.
The only two that weren't on their phone were the grandparents, and it's like, that's our culture. And you look around any restaurant, and you'll see
know.
over half the people on their phones.
Isn't that?
So,
I know it. I
you
know it. I
that
can't believe it.
communication skill when you're sitting down to a meal out should be across the table and to the person next to you, not
Yeah.
to whatever they're doing. So
Yeah,
I
we
think that
have,
makes it more difficult.
Well, you know, we have a smartphone addiction.
Yeah.
Absolutely, and then and as you know said, you know very well that that cuts out all the communication with the family. So there's no interchange back and forth between the grandparents who know more than the children and you know have things to share, but
Yeah.
how can they, you know, who are they going to share it with? Yeah, yeah.
And it's very hard to teach life skills and responsibility in a text message. I don't think it can be done.
Yeah, no, absolutely, absolutely. So if you get hooked on amphetamines, that's probably pretty hard to get off of.
The addiction is very strong. Going to the different trainings and just the experiences we've had here in Vernon County and dealing with people, it can be a lifelong addiction for some of these people. And I always remember one lady we talked to in a training that was methamphetamine in children, and she is very well to do now. She's got some beautiful daughters, but she was addicted to methamphetamine when she was younger, and she still said when the car breaks down or something happens with the kids, her first thought is, I need that to get through it.
Yeah.
And she craves the methamphetamine.
Yeah.
And it's been like 15, 20 years that she's been off of it, but that craving is still there. So for her, it's a daily battle. And I really believe that in talking with individuals who we've seen do very well and come out of treatment, and you think they've made it,
Yeah.
and then boom. But a lot of times it's because their friends or family, again, gets them involved with it.
Sure.
I relate it to like
Yeah.
quitting smoking, which is a very hard addiction for people to break.
You smoked at one
No, I
time?
don't. No, I don't.
No.
And but I have relatives and friends and family members that are working on trying to quit. And when they try to fight that addiction, it's hard when you're with some people that are smoking.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's so easy to reach for a cigarette, and there is an intercommunication, really. You smoke, I smoke, and we're smoking and talking and drinking coffee.
Yeah. Yeah.
Only coffee, and yeah, I smoked, and it was tough to get rid of. I tried 4, 5, 6 times, and finally, the day our eldest daughter was born, I thought, I cannot have a cigarette and let ashes spill on that poor little girl.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was a terrible cold. I was
Yeah.
able to quit. That was 50 years ago.
Yeah.
So you can do
Congratulations. That's good. That's good. That's
well,
good.
God's blessings, I'll tell you. We had, I have to laugh about, it's nothing to laugh at, but when I was growing up, alcoholism was kind of out there, especially in these were immigrant, kind of itinerant Norwegians, some of them, and they had no home. They worked from farm to farm. And boy, after a while, some of them really would hang them on. But we had what was called a Keeley cure. And I can remember my father sitting around a table talking about, well, you ought to go to the Keeley cure. Well, the Keeley cure was a local and a homemade place to get over the addiction. And since there was nothing else but alcohol and it was expensive, it wasn't too bad to get them off of it.
Yeah.
Well, now, what's going on between Vernon County and other county enforcements, like Dane County and Richland County and so forth?
We have a very good relationship with all the counties. We're very fortunate in Wisconsin. We have an emergency police services that we can utilize. We have the MEG unit, which is the Metropolitan Enforcement Group, which is made up of 5 local counties for a drug task force and for drug enforcement. Again, I just basically kind of bash some of the technology we have, but also that technology can enhance law enforcement with the ways we can communicate, because we're finding that, again, being such a mobile society, it's very common for us to be working on a drug case or a burglary case and find out that it's maybe connected to burglaries and drugs all the way down to Madison or Rock County or up into Marionette County, and we can quickly get information back and forth and share that information, and so that's important. But we have a good relationship. I think a lot of it is because we're all facing the same problems. Every law enforcement agency is under tight budget restraints. They're all facing the drug issues and all the other stuff. And then, of course, now we all share the common thing of right now we're living in a culture or a time in our society where law enforcement is being scrutinized like never before.
Oh, yeah.
And it's
absolutely.
very critical for everything to be positive and to be working with your communities.
All right. Now, the protestations and et cetera against policemen who had to defend themselves. It was a life and death matter. This sort of protesting force and accusing force, et cetera, to me, it sounds like it's being pushed more by a leftist group or by a group of criminals. Now here in Vernon County, I don't think you've got that kind of force at work yet, or do you?
No, no, we're very fortunate right now. We have a great partnership with our community, and we've got good community support, and we don't see those things. And I think it's because, again, even the incidents that we see in the public and in the media, on the national media, they are very small. There's small numbers. You can have a bad apple in anything. You have to address it and deal with it. But I think the biggest thing is to keep the public informed and keep the public involved. And that's one thing we have here. We do have community involvement in all of our events and a lot of things. But I think it's important to keep that out there, that use of force is something, excuse me, that has been around law enforcement forever. Vernon County, the Sheriff's Office started in 1851. We've always had use of force, but our officers are well trained. They know when to apply force and what level to apply.
Right.
But we could find ourselves at any time thrust into a situation where we would be criticized.
You know, absolutely. You know, the thing about that's really, that Jeannie and I noticed right away. We've been here now in western Wisconsin 6 years, something like that. But we've never seen such incredible community efforts to help each other. I mean, here's little Chaseburg and Coon Valley and Westby and Viroqua. I said they have incredible activities going on that benefit everyone around them. I mean, and it's ongoing. Like Chaseburg has trail days coming up, for example. And we got the Snowflake Club out there, you know, that Buzz Schrader is working on there. And but all of that portends good for the kind of work you're doing, because they in turn have their ears and eyes out here and are aware of things that are not going quite right. You know, and then we have the problem with, for example, the New York mayor. You know, he really was taking the side of the criminal and of the protester, and he kind of gave incentives then to that particular element of our society that, well, hey, look, the mayor is against this. We can kind of go out and tackle a cop now and then, you know. You don't have that here in Vernon County, or in western Wisconsin at least.
No, no, and I think the thing is too that our public officials, our leaders, I think they're more aware of the fact that they have to slow down, and we are very fortunate here. We don't live in that fast-paced 24-hour news cycle so much, and I think that's part of it. Is people run with stuff like after the recent terror attack in Paris. The first initial reports were way off of what some of the actual details were, but everybody wanted to be first to get it out there. And I think like New York and these places, they want that first information and they react, or they demand a reaction. That's where the leaders in a community, whether it's the mayor, county board chair, or whoever, steps back and says, when we're ready, when we have that information, we'll let you know. To give the public accurate information. If they have an officer that did something wrong, absolutely, that's when you put it out there. But you need to defend those, because again, it's a very small percentage, and it's not right to those other law enforcement officers in New York that are risking their lives, and now it's even worse. You know, they've got a battle going out there, and you know, your heart goes out to their families and them.
Oh, absolutely. You know, the thing about all of that is that it gets back to the individual family, then it goes to the individual groups within a town and so forth. And is there a possibility of some education? I'm talking about one-on-one or small groups or what have you. Churches should be a big part of helping here to help these people understand the downside, not only of the expense and the loss of your daily work and life, but it could kill you. And it really could take your life away for the rest of your life. All of that out there, would it help?
Oh, sure. I think it would help. And I think that especially in the bigger cities, the larger areas and larger communities where they have a large law enforcement group, and I don't know if they could ever get back to it, but they need to get back to it being community-based.
Yep.
You know, again, it's hard to compare us to some of these locations because I'm sure if you went to New York, LA, Chicago even, some of these places, and you called law enforcement because you locked your keys in your car or because of all these other things that we respond to every day,
Yeah.
you wouldn't get the service because they're probably too inundated with calls to react to that. Where here in Vernon County, we still can do that. You know,
bet.
not just the sheriff's office, but the local police departments.
Sure.
They help someone get into their home if they've locked their keys inside or whatever it may be. These little things that are not necessarily a law enforcement related call, but they call law enforcement for help, and we respond and do what we can, and that's the community policing part of it.
And then you have, you know, you know, the occasional event or person probably that is maybe addicted to 911. And, you know, he stubs the toe and I gotta call 911. Do you have any of those kinds of...
We get calls on 911 that are not a 911 call. And our dispatchers are very good about getting the information quick and getting them to another line or calling them back to take the information since, you know, because we don't want to tie up that emergency line.
Is there any punishment for people who insist on continuing to bother you for...
Definitely. If they continue to call 911 for a non-911 call, they can be charged. We only have very limited cases of those. Generally, it's somebody that's either under the influence of drugs or intoxicated. And that's the number they call, and they call complaining about something that's not an emergency.
Lying out there, you know, on the gutter with a smartphone.
Yeah. And so we have to deal with that. But again, with our 911 system, it's pretty nice because we can get people to that location fairly quickly. You know, especially with the smartphones today because it's all GPS.
How is the state reacting to this onslaught of amphetamine and methane?
Well, there's a lot of new initiatives coming down. As you know, the new Attorney General, Brad Schimmel, has a great heroin initiative that he's putting forth because the heroin addiction across the state is increasing, and he's hearing it from every aspect of law enforcement. And so I think you're going to see a lot of enforcement initiatives coming down. The interoperability and the connecting between all the agencies, as we talked earlier, is going to be very critical in the heroin epidemic to stop the transport from one location to the other and that movement. And I think we're going to see some new things. Hopefully it'll have some impact. That's the huge thing because, again, being reactionary, you hope you can get a handle on it. And we want our community to be the best we can. We don't want it to be like some other communities, you know, that are fighting a real huge problem with it.
You know, usually midway in a cable cast like this, John, I reintroduce my guest, which I've forgotten to do. I think everyone knows you, but it's my pleasure and a great appreciation today that Sheriff John Spears is with us, and we thank you. You've had a really rugged week here as we're sitting here today. And how many years have you been in law?
Over 30.
Over 30, see, so I must have started in kindergarten.
Yeah, thank you. There you go.
30 years and sheriff for
4. I just finished my first term and I'm starting my second term now.
And what are your feelings about law enforcement and being sheriff of a growing county?
It's great. It's great. You know, my goal for the next term is to forge more partnerships and strengthen the partnerships that we have. Continue to address the needs of the community. Again, the priority is going to be on keeping our crime rates low. Because Vernon County is still a place where we can walk down the streets or down our back roads and walk our dogs without worrying about being mugged or anything like that. And we also want to make sure we keep on the drug issues because the drugs are what we see because it impacts so many young people, and they can, with the addictions now with heroin and methamphetamine and the other new drugs, they can carry it on as they get older. We want to try to impact that. So through education and working with the other groups in our schools and everything else. The other thing we're going to be working hard on is the name of it is ALICE. It's an ALICE training, which is for training our schools to react to an active shooter situation or an intruder situation. And a lot of our schools are getting involved with that. And Viroqua, Westby, DeSoto, a lot of these schools are being trained, and that's great because that's part of the society we live in too. All of our officers, every village officer, city officer, the county deputies do walkthroughs in all the schools periodically and whenever they can to have a presence. And so we want to keep working on that because that's a never-ending threat. And those skills are important because they teach individuals, the adults, the staff, and the kids, what to do in a shooting situation. And they may need them at the mall or at a movie theater or wherever, as we've seen in the national news.
Right.
So that's important, and then to continue to improve what we can do for services in Vernon County. We just got our mock system, what we call it, running. It's a computer-based system that tracks our cars with GPS and gives a good location. They have all this communication right at their hands in their squad cars. But the great thing about it, for a crisis situation, we can set up points for officers to respond to, and anybody that's on that system can respond right to that location, whether it's a flood or another
Wow.
natural disaster. And we were actually the first ones in the state to go onto that state system, the first law enforcement agency, and so we were happy to be kind of treading new ground, and
That's really,
now we're urging other
that's
counties and
fantastic.
municipalities to get involved.
I don't know. Well, I'm glad you didn't have that when I was in high school with my Model A.
There you go. There you go.
But really, I mean, it's so helpful. And
Yeah.
I was stopped the other day on the way to Madison, Wisconsin, down there somewhere near Richland County, Richland Center, and I got a warning ticket, thank heavens. But you know, Janie's usually my scout. She says, "Watch out, there's a police car up there." You know, I'm infamous for going a little faster than I should.
I'll remember this. There we go. There we go. Maybe you'll be on my show then.
Yeah, yeah.
There you go. There you go.
Well, he was very kind, and he looked at my age, and he said, "Well, I'll give you a warning ticket." So, but boy, I'll tell you what, we all commend you, Sheriff John Spears, for the good work you do and the leadership that you provide, and you've got a lot of loyalty here, and thank God you're working in a county where people are, I think, are mostly God-fearing people,
Yep.
and they have the old ways here yet in this community,
Well,
which helps.
thank you. And it is a blessing to be sheriff in Vernon County, and the biggest part of it is I've always said I love my job. I've loved going to work every day since I started over 30 years ago.
Yeah.
But to live in a community where we have so many good people, and we couldn't do it alone without the community support. But all the men and women in law enforcement across the county, as well as all of them at the sheriff's office, a great bunch of people, and that makes it so much easier for me and for all of us to do our jobs in Vernon County. And I can't think of a better place to be, and I was born here and I'll die here in Vernon County.
There you go. Thank you so much,
Thank you,
Sean.
Bob. Thank you.
We'll be in close touch.
All right.
And good luck. So thank you so much for being with us on Old Bob Show. Boy, well, you know, what a quick half hour and talking with Sheriff John Spears. Four-year sheriff now in Vernon County, and we wish him the very best of luck and the blessings to him and all of his good workers. Thank you so much. Thank you, Janie, for being a super camera person again today, and Randy for directing and producing, and Vernon Communications, and of course we can't forget Rod Olson, the manager of Vernon Tel. We look forward to seeing all of you again soon, and you have a blessed day and weekend.